I'm Carol Thielen in front of the camera today. This quilt is called Illusion and it's designed by Christa Watson. Her company is called Christa Quilts. And this quilt is much easier to piece than it looks, and it gives you the optical illusion that the lines are angled, and they're really not. They're just as straight as they can be. Her pattern is called Illusion by Christa Watson. The pattern is an excellent pattern. It has very hard cardstock, and the pictures are really bright color throughout. And she talks about the design, choosing fabrics and cutting fabrics. I'm going to go over with you later on the fabrics I chose. And the cutting is pretty straightforward, except for the gray fabric, the accent fabric here, the small ones that also make up the straight vertical rows or vertical strips are a little bit hard to understand when you first read them, but I'll show you what that is and make it really easy for you. There are 3 sizes in this pattern, from lap, twin, and queen size, and this is the twin size version. You can order the pattern directly from her and you'll get this nice little booklet that's well worth the money, but for the same price you can also order a digital download for immediate download. Let's get started on a few tips of how to piece this, and then we'll show you how easy it is to piece this quilt. For my fabrics, I chose 3 MODA grunge fabrics. For the black, I chose the grunge Seeing Stars black dress, and for the white, I chose the grunge basics. This is called Metropolis Fog. And for the gray, or the accent fabric, I chose the basics primer, which is a gray. You can choose an alternate color for this. Christa calls this the accent color. So I just chose gray because I didn't want to choose a different color, but you could choose any color you want for this accent color. And depending on what size you're making, which quilt size you're making, you're going to cut squares from the black, squares and rectangles from the white. And for the gray fabric, or the accent fabric, you're going to cut very narrow strips, rectangles, and then very long, narrow rectangles. I kind of consider this accent fabric like a sashing almost, because it goes between the blocks and it also goes between the rows of blocks. The cutting instructions are on page 2. And from the black fabric, you're going to cut all squares. From the white fabric, you're going to cut squares, and then 4 different sizes of rectangles. These rectangles are going to be numbered A1, A2, B1, and B2. When you cut those rectangles out, take a little slip of paper and just label A1, and then put that piece of paper, pin it to your A1 pieces. Same thing with A2, B1, and B2, because if you don't do it that way, you will be going back and forth measuring and seeing which one it goes to where. So label them and pin them together. So that's my first tip. For the gray fabric, or the accent fabric, you're going to cut several long pieces depending on what size your quilt is going to be. And these pieces, if this piece of fabric represents the width of fabric, so if this is the selvage edge here and this is the length of fabric that you're going to buy, you're going to cut little strips down the lengthwise grain. Don't use the selvage, cut that off. And so you'll end up with an accent strip like this. So this is the one that I used. It was one left over. So it's very long. And you're going to cut these first. And once you cut these, so let's say that we've cut all of our pieces. These are going to be our little narrow pieces cut off like this. Okay, so these will be all of your strips for your long vertical sashing. And then this is the piece you have left. So you have your cut side here, and then you have your selvage side here. And what you're going to do is turn that in this direction, and you're going to cut strips in this direction first, one size, then you're going to cut them Let's say you're going to cut them this size, like this. And then all the way down as many as you need. And then you'll take these and cut them, subcut them in this direction. So you'll have little bitty strips. These are the ones that go between your blocks. Now they won't be this small. I just did it this small so you could see the big picture with a small piece of fabric. So these will be your long, narrow strips that go between your rows, and these will be your little strips that go between the blocks. At this point, these accent strips, the long, narrow ones, are going to be a little bit longer than you need. But later on, when we finish all of our vertical rows, we're going to measure them and cut these to the size we need to make the quilt square. So the next tip I'm going to give you is to use a 120-inch measuring tape. These strips that you cut, these vertical sashing strips, for the twin size, they're going to need to be about 88 inches long. And if you have a 60-inch measuring tape, it's going to be very difficult to measure all of this. So you just simply lay it at the edge, and then you just measure down this way. And it's easier if you hold this off of the table and let it fall to the ground, because then gravity helps you. So then once you measure, you can just simply take your scissors and cut the fabric where you need the length you need. So that's my third tip, is to buy and use a 120-inch measuring tape. Now what you're going to do with all of your squares and your rectangles are you're going to make 3 different rows. These are going to be your vertical rows. And if you're looking at this page, the one you start with on the left will be at the very top when you piece it. So you're going to piece your 3 different vertical rows, and again you should label them with a little scrap of paper. And then on page 6 it shows you how to put the rows together, and you're going to put them together in order according to this chart and according to the size you have. And then one of these vertical sashing strips will go between each one. When you piece all of these vertical rows together, use a bunch of pins. Don't be afraid to use pins. The more pins, the better. So once you piece all these vertical rows together, your quilt top is finished. So overall, I recommend getting this pattern if you like this quilt. It's an interesting quilt and a fun quilt to do. The pattern is well written, and the instructions are done very well too. I don't get any money for this. It's just a pattern I enjoy, and I wanted to share it with you. So I hope you can make one of these in your future. So thanks for watching, and the next video will be a paper pieced pattern.